Welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jaime Agostino, your host. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today on Financial Minds Meet the Experts, we are joined by returning guest Cindy Hagan, Compliance and Fraud Risk Director with Vizo Financial, to talk about elder abuse. Cindy, thank you so much for joining me today. But before we get started, would you mind telling our listeners something new about yourself?
Something new about myself. Well, it's funny, Jamie. This topic, as you well know, is personal to me. I happen to live with my 83-year-old mother. And so I really get to see firsthand what it's like to be dealing with someone as they are aging. And there are absolutely changes that happen as adults begin to age. And it's been it's certainly a topic that I've always cared about, but it now feels really personal as I'm watching it happen. And my we're fortunate enough to have the opportunity to live with my mother, so she has an advocate right in house. But it makes me keenly aware of the fact that um, these are folks who can be very vulnerable to exploitation on many levels.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you know, we just finished my mother-in-law's quarters here in my home. So at some point in time, my mother-in-law will be moving in with us, and we will be, helping her navigate these things as well. So, but let's get started. So, what exactly is elder financial abuse?
Well, I actually wrote it down because the technical description is using the resources of a senior citizen for monetary or personal benefit, profit, or gain, or depriving a senior citizen of rightful access to or use of benefits, resources, belongings, or assets. So it is essentially affecting and a senior citizen's access to or use of their funds.
Okay. All right. Who is at risk for abuse, neglect, and exploitation?
Well, frankly, anyone. But the reality is that one out of every 20 older adults in the United States is a victim of financial exploitation. And I have read that the average loss is between 80 and $186,000. That's for a single individual, the average. Now there are clearly people who are losing less, and unfortunately there are people who are losing significantly more. But anywhere on that spectrum, that's a significant impact. And nearly half of the crimes are committed by someone the older adult knows and trusts, whether it's a family member or a caregiver. That's a part of the statistic that gets me every time is that um, the fact that this is happening at the hands of people who should be tasked with helping them. There are kind of two things to think about. One of the major factors in vulnerability is early memory loss. Early memory loss can affect somebody's ability to make good financial decisions, and they can be more susceptible to exploitation. Um, Something else that it's important to remember is that as we're approaching it as financial professionals, is that um, the folks who are more likely to have or be victims have high levels of depression, and they're folks whose social needs aren't being met. So these are people who are quite literally sad and lonely and vulnerable.
Okay. What are the types of elder financial abuse, and can you give us some examples of it?
Oh, absolutely. It's there are kind of a couple areas that are straightforward. I mean, thefts and scams happen to all of our members, and everyone can be a victim of that. Um, but thefts and scams targeted at older individuals can be Medicare related. They might be COVID related. They might deal with some of their benefits. Sometimes they will come and be targeting them for home repairs, or they're frequently the victims of um, a scam that's targeted at a family member, typically a grandchild who's in some kind of danger and needs funds wired. So that those are the kinds of things that will prey on elderly members. Um, Technology can be very comfortable for your senior members, but not all of them. It's not something they grew up using and understanding. And so um, there will be pressure to complete something online or on their phone, and their frustration or lack of comfort with that technology can often lead them to providing information that they should not be. Um, Abuse of trust is one that they see someone, whether it's a friend, a caregiver, a relative, who is helping them, and who they trust and believe actually has a need or is doing something in their best interest. Talked about the fact that this is frequently at the hands of a caregiver or a relative, and that they call that financial entitlement. Someone will say, well, look, this money's coming to me anyhow, so I might as well start using it now. I shouldn't have to wait for it because it's coming to me. um, that's kind of a frustrating one. And then also coercion, and that can be at the hands of someone who has either access to the senior members funds, or maybe is a ride, or helping them around the house in some way. And so providing a service, or even just friendship to them, that they're using as leverage to access that member's funds.
Okay. Well, as far as like credit unions, what can financial institutions do, or what should they do to help protect their members from elder financial abuse?
Well, there are a couple things to do, Jamie. One of them is to educate your members. Some credit unions use their website to do that. They may have, I've talked to some who have done kind of like a little town hall meetings, having opportunities for small group or even one-on-one discussions with members regarding potential scams and abuse, so that they are not being victimized. A really critical one is to train your staff. Your employees ought to be able to be looking for that possibility. They should be looking for warning signs, changes in behavior, whether it's just their ability to transact effectively, or maybe their transactions patterns have changed. They're taking out more cash. They're having NSF. They're having wires and haven't done that before. Their activity has changed in some significant way, or perhaps they've got a caregiver or friend who is accompanying them and seems to be speaking on behalf of the member, or seems to be in charge or driving the conversation or the transactional activity. Those are things that your staff ought to be looking out for. They also need to have a comfort level of how to interact effectively with members if that's a concern. Now, that's not necessarily something that's comfortable for everybody on your staff, but there are tools available to help raise their awareness and raise their comfort level with interacting with members, and potentially heading off losses for them. The other thing your staff needs to understand is what to do when they do think there's a concern. It's not always a comfortable conversation, and sometimes there's no opportunity to have a conversation. You're simply become aware of transactional activity, or you have concerns that are raised because of the member's behavior. And then your staff really does need to know what's the next step. Who should they be reaching out to? Agencies like Adult Protective Services are often the first point of contact, but you should be looking at your jurisdiction who do I reach out to, and who am I required to reach out to? Because not unlike other reporting requirements, elder financial abuse is something that in some jurisdiction there are very specific reporting requirements and obligations involved with that. Um, Having said that, there are also protections for reporting suspected elder financial abuse. So someone who has had appropriate training, understands what to be looking for, who to report to, there is a level of protection to do that if in fact you're doing that in the the perceived best interest of your member. So it's not just something that someone should say, I shouldn't, it's not my business. It's not my responsibility. I would hope that with some training and discussion among staff that the understanding is that it protects your not just your institution from potential loss, but more importantly, it's protecting your members who might be potentially vulnerable to exactly that kind of exploitation or abuse.
Why do you think elder abuse remains such a almost invisible problem in today's society?
Well, and I don't say this lightly, I think many of us dismiss senior members of our community. They are not as they can be perceived as not contributing in the same way, not being as vibrant or as vital, and that breaks my heart when I see that and when that's happening. Um, from our membership perspective, uh, when this happens to someone, they're embarrassed. There is a fear of um, potential consequences. What if I won't be allowed to have access to my money? What if they're going to put me in a home? What if I'm embarrassed to say I have lost money and that I didn't make a good choice about this, and that maybe I'm no longer capable to do these things on my own. So there are a number of senior members who don't have uh, financial advocates, somebody to help them understand how to make good decisions, how to recognize a scam or a potential opportunity where they might become a victim. So I think that fear and shame, frankly, are the biggest um, drivers in this not it being reported by members, and then our own lack of respect and advocacy for senior members can absolutely be um, a cause for this not being reported.
Yeah, I completely agree. When you hit emotions like fear, that really kind of puts people in a position where they're scared to say anything. And unfortunately, that is a tactic that people use. And then the elderly person's so scared to say anything that it becomes invisible. So
Absolutely. And when you think about it, Jamie, no one wants to admit that they are not as sharp as they were, or they're not on top of all of their decision making, or that any of their abilities are beginning to fail. That's not comfortable. That's hard to accept, and so every time something reminds you of that, that's unpleasant. And of course, there is for many folks that fear um, that those diminishing abilities will lead to um, some further restrictions or being even less valued.
right, right. What resources are there for the credit unions, for the credit union employees, for their members, or any other concerned parties?
Well, the good news is there are some really great resources out there. The Justice Department has an elder justice initiative that's got some really great resources out there, not just for uh, financial institutions, but also for caregivers, for family members, for members themselves. There's some great tools on there. That's at the Justice Government. That was easy for me to say. The Justice Department's website. So I'll say it slowly. It's www.justice.gov. And they have a specific site for elder justice. So if you're on the Justice Department's website and search elder abuse or elder justice, there's some great tools out there. Um, AARP, their website has a specific site called Bank Safe that talks about exactly some of the things we talked about today. Medicare has a site as well. It's MedicareAdvantage.com. That's got some great tools. Again, that's looking a little more family member specific. But I've just had the opportunity to listen to a presentation that just really shook me on this one at Wayne State University in Michigan. They have an institute on of gerontology, and they are doing specific work into elder financial abuse and exploitation. And I was so excited to listen to the gentleman who's running that is Dr. Peter Lichtenberg. And they've got a website that has really specific tools for senior members, for their family members and caregivers, and also specifically for financial institutions. And at the talk I was at, there was a credit union who is using their training and their tools specifically to work with that. And it was exciting to hear. Their CEO was part of this presentation, and she was saying her staff is now energized. They understand what to look for, and when they can say, "I was able to stop this transaction, to prevent this loss for a member because I asked the right questions, because I could see the signs." That's exciting to be able to give people those tools to be able to do. So that's one that I'm really excited about. And again, it's Wayne State University's Institute of Gerontology, but their website is oldernestegg.com. Older adult, I'm sorry, olderadultnestegg.com. Really great tools, and they everything they do is free because they're in the middle of researching this topic. So they're eager for more information, more people adopting their programs, using their training, getting feedback from that from financial institutions. So that's an exciting tool and resource that's available for free to credit unions to be able to reach out to that group at Wayne State, and they're excited to be able to reach more financial institutions and help more older adults.
All right. Cindy, thank you so much. Any final thoughts or comments for our listeners on elder abuse?
Well, as I said in the very beginning, this one is personal, and it breaks my heart that the very people who built our families, our communities, our businesses can be shuffled aside and then taken advantage of repeatedly, and a great personal loss. I would just encourage people to take it seriously, make it part of your training and your everyday life, whether it's at your credit union or in your personal life as well. Do what you can to be a financial advocate for a senior citizen.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for joining me today. And another thing that I also want to talk about it real quick, social engineering. Social engineering impacts us all, not just the elderly. The more practice and emphasis you put on social awareness or security awareness, the better you'll be able to deal with social engineering threats like phishing, vishing, cyber attacks. This is why Vizo Financial has partnered with an industry leader in social engineering testing and security awareness training to help you get the practice through social engineering testing services. By utilizing the same tactics as criminals might leverage to gain access to your credit union, this service can help you gauge your level of risk within the institution and adjust your security awareness training accordingly. Make security awareness a top priority at your credit union with Vizo Financial's social engineering testing services. To find out more, please visit our website, www.vfccu.org. Thanks for listening and have a great day.